Today, Harris and Walz hit key swing states with Michigan and Wisconsin rallies. Taylor Swift's Vienna concerts cancelled after a security threat.
The UK on alert, but fresh wave of far-right disorder fails to materialise, and tense Israel in waiting as attack threat looms.
It's Thursday, August 8th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in just 10 minutes every weekday. I'm Tara Oakes in Liverpool.
And I'm David Spencer in London.
Wow. Hello, Claire.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz putting his Midwestern credentials to the test, as he and Vice President Kamala Harris held rallies in the battleground states of Wisconsin and Michigan.
Let us be clear. Someone who suggests we should terminate the Constitution of the United States should never again have a chance to stand behind the seal of the President of the United States.
As the Democratic candidates continued their first joint campaign, promoting the newly formed Harris-Walz ticket, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was also in town. He held press conferences in the same cities, saying he was following Harris across the country to provide a contrast. In fact, at one point on Wednesday, Air Force Two sat just yards away from a Trump-Vance airplane on the Wisconsin tarmac, prompting Vance to take a look.
And I went over there because I thought it might be nice to check out this plane that's going to be mine in a few months if we all take care of business, and I think we will.
Such has been the speed of change in this election race, it's hard to believe it was only a few weeks ago that Donald Trump's campaign was envisioning a landslide victory against President Joe Biden. Now, the Trump campaign is fighting a surge for the Democrats and Kamala Harris. Polls show she has erased Trump's lead over Biden. Graham Slattery covers the Trump campaign.
In a sense, the Trump campaign always thought there was a possibility that the Democratic nominee could be switched. What caught them off guard was the degree of momentum that Harris seemed to be able to capture. It's not that they were totally unprepared, but certainly for the first time in this campaign, they were the ones that were flat-footed, didn't seem to have solid, consistent messaging, seemed to be grasping at different punchlines, and they still are to a certain degree. You know, it's not that the Trump camp thinks that they're going to lose, but this is the first time that they feel like they could lose.
So the race is now tied, but Harris has completely reshaped the map. How?
As one operative told me, a Republican operative said, it's not so much a whole-scale shifting of the map as much as a shrinking of the map. So before this, the Trump team genuinely thought that they had a chance at some light blue states like Virginia or Minnesota. These days, really the race comes down to Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and the Rust Belt, which in this case is Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. The early data suggests that the Democrat surge is perhaps slightly more significant in a place like Georgia with a very big Black population than in some predominantly white states like Pennsylvania, just because we're seeing that the Harris bump is much bigger among Blacks and to a certain degree Hispanics than among whites, where it doesn't really exist at all.
And looking at the recent Reuters Ipsos polling for the US election, it finds the vice president is drawing more support from black voters than Biden did, while Donald Trump's support among white voters has risen somewhat in recent months.
Taylor Swift's 3 concerts in Vienna this week have been cancelled after the government confirmed a planned attack at the stadium. Austria's Chancellor Karl Nehammer said a tragedy was prevented. 2 people suspected of plotting attacks on concerts have been detained in Austria.
Barcelona, and a huge crowd surrounds former Catalan separatist leader Carles Puigdemont, who has returned to the city despite facing arrest. He fled to Belgium 7 years ago, but is looking to reignite the flagging independence movement there. Puigdemont spoke to a crowd of thousands in the city and vowed to attend today's session of the regional parliament.
Stop the fascists now, chant protesters in Liverpool, at one of a number of rallies held across Britain on Wednesday. Thousands of police and anti-racism protesters gathered in towns and cities to challenge disorder threatened by far-right groups. That threat failed to materialise, following more than a week of violent racist attacks targeting Muslims and migrants.
To the International Space Station and an extended stay for 2 astronauts. The pair hitched a ride on Boeing's Starliner to the ISS back in June, but there have been an array of problems with the craft's propulsion system. So the astronauts that expected to be there for a few days might not now come back until February. Our regular markets expert Carmel is still on her summer vacation, so here to give us the latest from London once again is Amanda Cooper. Amanda, what have you got your eye on?
I don't think I'm the only one that feels like they might need a neck brace this week with the kind of volatility that we've seen across markets. The mood is definitely jittery. We've got the yen making strides, getting stronger again, stocks looking a little bit weaker. But again, it's what you'd expect after such a big move earlier this week. It's sort of the ripple effect. One thing that's caught my attention today is another decline in the copper price. What's interesting is that copper has retreated now by more than 20% since it hit a record high a few weeks ago, which technically puts it in a bear market. It's not necessarily the case that where copper goes, the economy follows, but it's definitely something that people will have on their radars. Looking ahead to the US later today, we've got initial weekly jobless claims. This shows us the number of people that file for unemployment benefit for the first time. This will be under particular scrutiny after last week's monthly employment report that came in softer than expected and unleashed some of the turmoil that we've seen this week.
Israel remains on tenterhooks as it waits out a threatened attack. Iran and its proxies have vowed revenge after key Hamas and Hezbollah assassinations last week. Israel has been bracing for months, but the urgency has risen sharply in the last 10 days. In an underground bunker in Ramla, bags of blood are loaded onto a trolley in preparation for any retaliation. This is Arya Myers, an official at the National Blood Services Centre.
Should there be a major crisis, people can't come in to donate because Hezbollah has attacked, because Iran has attacked. Whatever it is, we want to make sure we have enough supplies to keep the country going and supplied for at least the first few days of an all-out regional war.
And for the view from inside Israel, we spoke to our reporter, Mayan Lubel.
You have seen more calls by authorities, whether it's local council, municipalities, for people to be prepared, to stock up, to have enough food for a few days, to be ready for a power cut just in case. But generally, the guidelines from the home front haven't changed. This is because no one knows yet what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. The Israeli military has a new system in place based on alert systems you know from other places in the world, maybe for an earthquake or a tsunami, but it's adapted it now for missiles coming in. You've had some refineries in Haifa, that's a port city in northern Israel, move out hazardous material in case they're struck. And hospitals are, of course, ready to receive mass casualties.
How is the mood in Israel? What's expected?
Well, Israelis are used to the crisis, basically. So I would say people are rather tense, but they're not panicked. I think people are just kind of waiting for it to be over more than anything. I think it's the uncertainty that Israelis are finding jarring right now, not so much fear of the actual attack.
Before we wrap for today, we'll leave you with our recommended read, which is about Intel and a costly and previously unreported decision the chip giant made 7 years ago. That's when it decided to back out of a deal to buy a stake in a company called OpenAI. Find out how that decision has left Intel, once at the cutting edge of computer chips, on the back foot and scrambling to catch up. You can find a link in today's pod description.
And for more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. To never miss an episode, subscribe on your favourite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.